Hello, good evening to all of you. I hope all of you are doing well. So, in today's class, we'll be learning about how to declare objects belong to a particular class, right? So, objects can be declared using the following syntax. So, what we can have is we can have the class name. Followed by the object name. So here what we have is we have the object rect1 of type rectangle, where rectangle is a class. So again, I'll repeat it. So in order to declare a object of a particular class, you need to specify the class name, and then you need to specify the object name. So here we have an example, rectangle rect1. So rect1 is our object of type rectangle, where rectangle is a class. So in order to access the member of a particular class, what you can do is you can use the dot operator. So here you see a member of the class can be accessed using the dot operator. Now let us try to understand different ways in which what we can do is we can define the member functions belonging to a particular class. Now there are two ways in which we can define member functions belonging to a particular class. That is, the first one is you can define the class inside the class definition itself, or you can define the class outside the class definition. Now let us try to understand the first one, defining the member function inside the class definition. So here what you need to understand is that whenever you are trying to define a member function inside the class definition, the member function will be always considered as inline function. So this is a very important consideration in C++. So whenever you are trying to define a member function inside the class definition, then the member function will be always considered as inline function. That means you need to satisfy the various criteria for being an inline function, right? So here what we have done is we have tried to elaborate on defining a function inside the class with the help of an example. So here what we have is we have a class car. Okay, and the members of the class car are car number, a car model. Okay, car number is an integer value, and car model is a character array. Okay, and you have so these two members, the data members, are private by the virtue of the class, right? Okay, so by default, as the members, these two members will be private, and in the public section of that particular class, what we have is we have two functions, get data and show data. Get data and show data both are not taking in any parameters, and the return type of both the function are void. So here what we have is we have simple statements. So get data is capable of getting the car number and the model number, and show data is capable of reflecting the car number and the model number again. So whenever you define a member function inside the class, it will be by default considered as an inline function. Okay, so I have the main function being defined in the following manner. So I have c1. So c1 is a variable of type car, where car is a class, right? So I'm using the dot operator in order to access the members. So c1 dot get data and c1 dot show data. So what it will do, it will read the data for object c1, and it will display the content of the data object c1, right? So get data and show data will read the attributes of object C1 and display the attributes of object C1. So this is a very simple C++ program that shows how we can define the class inside the class definition. Now the next way is defining the class outside the class definition. So what we can do is we can define the member function outside the class definition. So whenever we are defining the member function outside the class definition, it's very much important for us to explicitly specify to which class a particular function belongs to, because there can be multiple functions by the same name. So in order to prevent any misinterpretation, so you need to specify to which class the function belongs to. So that's done using the scope resolution operator, as we have learned in the past. So scope resolution operator is used in order to define the member function outside the class. Okay, so how to do it? So syntax for declaring defining member function outside the class. So it is defining member function outside the class. So here you see what we have is we have return type, we have the class name to which the function belongs to, and we have the function name and the argument list. Okay, so this is the way how what we can do is we can define the function outside the class, and inside the class what we'll have is we'll have the simple function declaration. So where we'll specify the return type, function name, and the argument optional argument list. So in case if we are defining the function outside the class, so inside the class what we'll have is we'll have the simple declaration statement where the function will be defined outside the class using the scope resolution operator. Now let us try to understand it with the help of an example. So here what I have is I have a class car where we have the data members as car number and model number. So both are of type type private nature, right? So then what I have is I have function get data and show data placed in the public section of the class. Now get data and show data are functions that are defined outside the class. So whenever these functions are defined outside the class, what we need to do is we need to use the scope resolution operator here. So get data is a function that belongs to, so here get data is a function that belongs to class car and which returns void and takes nothing, right? So that's the way how the interpretation is done. So that's the reason why what we do is we use scope resolution operator. So here again we're using scope resolution operator to indicate that show data is a function of class car which returns void and does not take any parameter. So the definition of both the definition of both the function will remain as same as that of the previous program. But here what we have done is we have defined the class outside the class definition. Now, how can we make a outside function that's defined outside as an inline function? Now, that is very much easy. So what we need to simply specify is we need to simply specify the keyword inline before the function definition in case if the function is defined outside the class, right? So here what we have is we have a very simple example. I've taken up same example as that of the previous case, but here what I've simply done is I've simply placed the inline keyword before the class definition so that the function get data and show data will be considered as an inline function. So but we need to ensure that it satisfies the criteria for inline function. So this is the way how what we can do is we can make a class that is defined outside the class a inline function. So now let's talk about nesting of member functions. So what we can do is we can have a member function placed inside another member function. So that is what is nesting of member function. So a member function can call another member function of the same class directly without using the dot operator. Now this is called as the nesting of member function. Just listen to me carefully. A member function can call another member function of the same class directly using the dot operator. Now this is called as nesting of member function. Now we have a very simple example here, right? Just see here what we have is we have a class that is called as nest. Okay, inside the class we have data member a and we have a member function square num, so it's capable of finding square of a number, right? Now likewise we have in the public section we have input num that is capable of reading the value of the num a, and we have another function that is placed in the public section that is cube num that is capable of finding the cube of the number. So here you see what we have is we have square num which is placed in the private section of the program of the class declaration, when we have input num and we have cube num being placed in the public section, as well as we have display num. Now display num is a function that's defined in the public section. So in just see in display num what we have done is we have declared a variable sq that is initialized with the invocation of square num, and cu, that is initialized with the cube num function, right? Okay, and then what we are doing is we are printing the value of sq and cu. So whenever we are executing this particular function, square num and cube num function that lies elsewhere in the class definition is being invoked in order to perform operation of finding out the square and the cube of the number. So now here I have declared a object of type nest. N1 is object of type nest. So, and using N1, what I've done is I have created reference to input num function. So N1 dot input num will execute input num belonging to N1. So in the input num, what we have is we have the value of a being read. Now, after that, once the value of a is being read, then what we are invoking is we are invoking display num of n1. So we are instructing n1, we are requesting n1 object to perform display num. So whenever display num will be executed, square num, which is a part of the class, will be invoked. Likewise, cube num, which is the part of the class, will be invoked, and the result will be displayed. So this is the way how what we can do is we can invoke a member function inside another in member function. Now this is called as nesting of member function. Okay, so here a member function can call another member function of the same class directly without using the dot operator. Now this is called as nesting of member function. Now this is the way how what we can do is we can do nesting. So in today's class, what we have learned about is we have learned about how to declare objects of a particular class. We have learned about how to define member functions of a particular class. So it can be defined inside the class and it can be defined outside the class. We have learned about how to define a function member function inside the class, and we have come across a point that every member function that is defined within the class will be by default considered as an inline function. And then we have learned about the way how we can define a class outside the class definition, right? Okay, and we have learned about how to make the class that is defined outside the class definition as an inline function. And then we have learned about nesting of member functions. So how what we can do is we can nest member function belonging to same class, and how we can access it without using dot operator. So we will be ending the class here. So we'll be continuing with the chapter in the subsequent classes. Thank you very much.